Hey, this is Corey from Reliance. We're going to continue our list of 100 prepper items. This is the second video because we're on the second part of the list, which is cooking. So this list right here is going to focus on cooking and water because again, we can only go 3 days without water and 3 weeks without food. And so in order to survive, we need to have it. It's a huge comfort, it's a morale booster, and it gives us the energy we need to keep moving forward. And so food is very important. And because of that, my first item is food. And the reason it's on this list is because we've all been there before, right? We have 2-3 weeks worth of food, or maybe it's a 1 week, and it's set aside. It's, we're all prepared. It's there just in case of an emergency, but then we don't really feel like going grocery shopping, right? Going to the grocery store after work, I'm exhausted from work, I'll just pull from that, right? And then before you know it, a whole week has gone by and it's gone. Now you have to go grocery shopping because your whole supply is gone, and so now you have to rebuild, right? And so make sure that you have food on hand, that you are rotating, right? Because if you have 2 weeks worth of food and something happens, that's great. But if you dwindle it down to where you only got a couple days of food and then something happens, now you're in real trouble, right? So make sure you're not stealing from that stockpile, because again, if you need it and it's not there, it's going to be a big deal. There's a story I just heard about where there was a girl, she quit her job, right, and got a different job. And you know how you have to wait 3 weeks before you get paid at your next job? And so there was some kind of confusion at her old job. So she had to go 4 weeks without a paycheck. And she said the only reason she was able to afford gas to get to and from her new job was because she didn't have a grocery bill, right? She had a stockpile of food, and she's not a prepper. She doesn't consider herself one. She's just a friend. And she said if she didn't have that food set aside, she wouldn't have been able to afford the gas to get to and from her new job. And then, of course, everything got fixed and situated, and she ended up getting paid where she needed to get paid, and her new job paid her, of course. And so everything worked out, and she was able to resupply her stockpile. But if she didn't have it, who knows what could have happened. So having that food on hand when you need it, and you never know when you're going to need it, is important. Number 2 is water. A lot of people have water filters, some way of purifying water, but what if you don't have access to water in the first place? Having water on hand, I know a lot of people don't like bottled water, but bottled water is a really good way of storing it. Even if you buy just a gallon jugs, or if you buy actual bottled water, it's a good way of storing water that you can cook with, you can clean with. And so if the power goes out, so if you're on a well and the power goes out, you don't have any running water, right? I'm on city water, and so there's a water tank, and as long as there's water in the water tank, there's water to the city. But as soon as that water runs dry, again, it's gone. And so make sure you have water on hand that you can utilize and you can use, because so much depends on water, right? Again, you can only go 3 days without water, but also your ramen noodles, your rice, you got to boil your beans, there's so many things that you cook, your dehydrated meals. So many things are dependent on water. And if you don't have water to cook them, now you can't eat, right? And so make sure that you have water on hand that you can access, so that you can make sure that you can cook all those things that you have stocked up and put away. Number 3 is water filters, right? Having a water filter, having a way of collecting water that might be questionable, whether it's lake or river or pond or rain or some kind of water that you have access to, a way of filtering it and making it safe to drink is very important. Sometimes boiling isn't enough. Sometimes you have to boil and filter. Sometimes you can just filter it. Sometimes you can just boil it. But being able to get all the chlorine and chemicals out of the water is important. So having a filter, I think, is a really good idea. Number 4 is water jugs, right? If you have to go to the river, lake, pond, collect rainwater? Do you have a way of carrying that water over distance? And also, do you have a way of collecting it, right? You need to have some kind of jug. You need to have some kind of container where you can get a lot of water all at once and then bring it home to your filters or be able to filter it. Having those jugs is very important, and so make sure you have not only access to water but a way of moving it from place to place. Number 5 is pots and pans. Having pots and pans is super important. A lot of people have a pot, a pan. They don't really cook that much, so they don't really need much. Well, if you're going to be making rice, is your pot big enough to make a bunch of rice? If you're going to be making noodles and a bunch of noodles, do you have the pots and the pans to do that? I know for me personally, when me and Caroline moved into this house, I had some pots and pans. She had some pots and pans, but none of them were big enough to make food for, like, you know, I had a little tiny pot and a little tiny pan because the only person I cooked for was me. And she had a little pot and a little pan because the only person she cooked for was herself. And so being able to cook bigger meals, we needed bigger pots and pans. And so making sure that you have what you need. Also, what are you going to be cooking on? Because if you're going to be planning on cooking over an open fire, you need to make sure that your pots and pans are capable of handling that. Like our kitchen pots and pans can't handle being cooked over a fire pit, right? And so I have my camping pots and pans so that if I have to cook over an open fire, if I have to cook on a camp stove, if I have to cook on different ways of heating the food, I have a pot and a pan that can accommodate for that. So think about those things when you are putting your preps together. Number 6 is fuel. So I just mentioned different cooking methods. So if you need butane, propane, if you need one of those green container, one of those 1 pound green Coleman propane, or if you need one of those big white tanks for a grill, make sure that you have all the fuel you need to mix and match and do what you need to do so that you always have a way of cooking, right? You want to make sure that your heat source is always capable of making whatever it is you plan on eating. Number 7 is fishing poles. This is another one of those things that people don't really think about, because when if you don't have the food on hand, right? You can go fishing and you can get food that way. You can fillet a fish, you can get different bass, crappie, perch, whatever it is. And if you can fillet them, you can eat them, right? And if you have a way of cooking them with your stoves and your fuel, you know, you can go and you can get food that's not in a grocery store, excuse me. So fishing poles, hunting tools, again, being able to go hunting and gathering and making sure you have what you need for that. Number 8 is gardening tools, right? Being able to have a garden, even if you live in an apartment, there's a lot of community gardens. There's a lot of places where you can go and just start a garden. Or if you notice a place that has a garden, you can go and you can help them with their garden, and maybe an exchange system, right? Maybe you go hunting and then you help them with their garden and you give them meat for some of their vegetables. Or maybe, you know, there's a lot of different things that you can do to kind of barter and trade when it comes to gardening tools. Number 9 is eating utensils and cooking utensils. And so making sure that you have the spoons and the spatulas and all the things that you need to cook different things with. I know again, when we first moved into this house, we didn't have a lot of those things. We didn't have a lot of spatulas and mixing spoons and all the things that we needed to make bigger meals. And so having those on hand is super important. You need to be able to cook. You need to be able to cook for a larger group because, again, you're not going to be going out to eat. You're not going to be going to restaurants. You're going to be kind of bunkering down, staying at home. And so making sure that you have the ability to cook the things that you have in your pantry, being able to serve and dish them out, and having the ability to do that for a larger group of people. Because maybe you're having friends or relatives over because they weren't prepared, and so now they're coming to you for help, and you need to be able to serve all of them. Number 10 is canning jars or containers for you to store your ingredients in. You want to be able to safely store your flour, your cinnamon, your sugar, your brown sugar, all your things, your noodles, your rice. You know what I mean? You need to be able to store all that stuff safely so that it's ready to use and it's not bad by the time that you actually need it. You need to be rotating these things, and so having containers that you can monitor. I like see-through containers so I know how much of everything we have. Having the 5-gallon buckets and checking them often to make sure that they're, again, nothing is molding or going bad. There's not moisture getting into things making it clump up and go bad. Making sure that you're rotating all these things and having containers that you can really get easy access to is important. And then for a bonus, number 11, cooking grate over a fire. Just having a grate that you can cook over an open fire means that you can always cook, right? Even if you're just roasting marshmallows and hot dogs over an open fire on a stick you find on the ground, you can always eat, right? You can always do whatever it needs to do, because if you can start a fire, there's probably something in your house that you can roast over that fire. And if you have a cooking grate, it can be burgers, steaks, chicken, anything that you have, you can probably cook on that open fire if you really want to figure it out. And a grate makes it so much easier. So those are the things for this week. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the top 100. As you can see with this bonus, there's going to be more than 100. But in the comment section down below, I want to know what cooking tools, what cooking utensils do you think are super important that most people just don't even think about when they're thinking about personal preparedness. Leave it in the comment section. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, and I can't wait to see you on my next video.